I mean, so Russ, like, here's the thing, like, it would be hard for any player to go from being the MVP of the NBA to then taking on a role where you're coming off the bench.
Russell Westbrook, former MVP and 9-time All-Star, is now facing a brutal truth. No NBA team wants him. While critics label it as a downfall of his career, fellow NBA players aren't keeping quiet.
Russ, always vouch for any time, any chance, that I can team up with Russ after that experience playing with him in Oklahoma.
Paul George, Patrick Beverley, and others are stepping up to defend him. Their response to his continued free agent status raises a serious question. Why is the NBA abandoning one of its legends? Let's break it down. The defenders are speaking out. In the world of professional basketball, loyalty is almost extinct. Players jump from team to team, turning opponents into teammates and brothers into rivals overnight. Yet when Russell Westbrook, at 36 years old, found himself signed in free agency, something rare happened. The players who had shared the court with him didn't stay silent. They spoke loudly, not through PR-filtered statements or half-hearted sympathy, but with raw emotion and frustration over what they saw as disrespect to one of the game's true icons. These weren't meaningless comments. They were heartfelt defenses from people who had earned his respect and whose respect he had earned in return. Perhaps the loudest voice came from Michael Porter Jr., Westbrook's former teammate on the Denver Nuggets, who had just been traded to the Brooklyn Nets. On September 23, 2025, Porter appeared on the Respectfully Justin Labboy show and didn't hold back. His words painted a vivid picture watching Westbrook handle one of the hardest transitions any professional athlete can experience, from MVP-level superstar to role player. What Porter saw moved him deeply, and his frustration was obvious from the start.
Here's the thing, like, it would be hard for any player to go from being the MVP of the NBA to then taking on a role where you're coming off the bench, but you still have, like I said, even me, going from being the best player to then having some injuries and have to accept, like, okay, like, I need to figure out a role. That's tough. So for Russ, to go from MVP to then be told he's going to play this type of role and to then, go to these different teams and get disrespected by so many people. When he went to LA, he was disrespected crazy. When he went to the Clippers, people hated on him crazy. Meanwhile, he's been the MVP of the NBA. So I feel like all those things weighed on him.
He directly called out Lakers and Clippers fans for the way they treated Westbrook during his stormy Los Angeles years. What made Porter's remarks hit harder was his willingness to confront the most damaging rumor of all, that Westbrook was toxic in the locker room. For years, whispers followed him from team to team, but Porter shut down fast. There were rumors about Russ ruining the locker room. That's cap. He bought into the system. He was cheering people on. Porter said, using his platform to dismantle narratives that had haunted Westbrook during his journeyman chapter. He didn't stop there. His admiration was crystal clear.
But me and Russ had a good relationship. I looked up to Russ in a lot of ways. When I was young, like, Oklahoma City was the team I watched, KD and him. So it was dope getting to know Russ, and he's a fierce competitor. Like, again, like, you talk about greatness, like Russ to this day, like, he's a little older now. Like, he can still move and stuff, but he's a little older. But every day he's in the gym getting his shots up, doing his thing. The things that came out were like normal things that happen within an 82-game season in the NBA. I don't know who leaked some of the stuff in the locker room. I don't know if one of the coaches, but it was a little strange because, like, the things that came out, like, yeah, teammates are gonna, like, not see eye to eye and they're gonna get into it. It was little stuff though.
Porter's defense resonated because it came from real experience and genuine respect. At 27 years old, he had witnessed Westbrook up close during the 2024-2025 season, how he trained, carried himself, and treated teammates. But Porter wasn't the only one speaking out. Patrick Beverley, the retired guard Patrick Beverley, who had transitioned into a successful podcast career, used his platform on the Pat Bev Pod to voice his disbelief about Westbrook's situation. On August 28, 2025, Beverley didn't hold back. It's shocking, man. Westbrook's still stretching with the team every day, every single day. We're talking about a man who's elite. He shot 40% from three in Denver. He won games in the playoffs. I don't know what's taking so long. I know the Kings love him and want to trade Malik Monk to clear space for him. I don't know, man. It's a little disrespect that Russ hasn't been signed yet, if I'm honest. Beverley's remarks were especially intriguing given his complicated history with Westbrook. The two were involved in a controversial incident back in 2013, when Beverly's defensive play caused Westbrook to suffer a meniscus tear, forcing him to miss crucial playoff games. But by 2023, when they became Lakers teammates, things had changed. They developed genuine mutual respect, even a friendship, forged through the shared struggle of navigating the unforgiving world of professional basketball and relentless media criticism. Beverly continued to defend Westbrook, directly confronting the toxic locker room cancer narrative that had shadowed him for years. When I was with the Lakers, I was like, Russell Westbrook a cancer? Nah, that's cap. He was the hardest worker, brought energy when we needed it. Coming from someone who had battled and later bonded with Westbrook, that statement carried serious weight. It wasn't an empty defense. It was testimony from a man who had every reason not to sugarcoat the truth. Paul George, another former teammate who had shared the court with Westbrook on both the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Los Angeles Clippers, also stepped up. On his podcast, Podcast P with Paul George, on August 15, 2025, George expresses disbelief. Man, Russell signed? That's wild to me after what he did in Denver. Coming off the bench, sparking that run to the semis. Team sleeping on a guy who's still crashing boards like it's 2017. I saw it firsthand in LA. His leadership kept us locked in when Kawhi and I were banged up.
For Russ, always vouch for any time, any chance, that I can team up with Russ after that experience playing with him in Oklahoma. I'm going to be the first to voice, because it goes, people don't understand, it goes deeper than the on-the-court shit. What he bring off the court to a locker room, to an organization, is shit that you, it's one of one. You know what I mean? He's passion, he's, talk about somebody that's just all in and all about the...
George elaborated on their Oklahoma City connection. We wanted him back. No cap. He's just so valuable. Not just the points or dimes, but that fire teaches the young guys how to compete. If Philly had space, I'd vouch for him tomorrow. What made these defenses powerful wasn't just who said them. It was when they were said. These weren't sympathy statements made when Westbrook was dominating headlines. They were raw, unsolicited defenses of a man written off by many. Porter, Beverly, and George used their platforms to shout a collective truth. You're wrong about this guy. You don't know what he brings. You're making a mistake. And they weren't alone. Kevin Durant and Chris Paul also came forward in defense of Westbrook. When asked about the criticism Westbrook constantly faced, Durant responded,
Russ? Not about criticism. I mean, people going to always criticize when you're successful and, you're doing your thing for this long, Somebody going to always find something that they don't like about you.
Durant continued.
So,
Durant continued.
When he's retired, people going to really tell the truth about how they feel about his game. Right now, it's a fun thing to do is to make a joke out of Russ, but he the way he's been playing is since he got with the Clippers, showed everybody who he really is.
Chris Paul added his perspective.
I feel like the only people to do that too is the people who don't know basketball.
Fact.
You know what I'm saying? And don't know what it's like to compete. I know for me, Russ is one of my closest friends. You know what I'm saying? And so people that do that, talk crazy, probably wish they could be in that situation. You know what I mean?
Raymond Felton, a former Oklahoma City teammate, also spoke out, voicing his disappointment over how Westbrook had been treated throughout his career. The man's been hated on his whole entire career. How can you just disrespect the man and his loyalty? Felton asked, referring to Westbrook's choice to stay in Oklahoma City after Kevin Durant's departure in 2016, a decision that spoke volumes about his integrity and commitment. Even Nikola Jokic, the reigning three-time MVP and Westbrook's most recent teammate, offered his public support. After a controversial game in which Westbrook made a few late game mistakes, Jokic stepped in to defend him. It happens. Everybody makes mistakes, he said. Jokic had previously praised Westbrook's leadership and relentless drive during their time together.
Slower, so he just waited me to get to the spot, and he passed it always on the right time. So he always played. I mean, he's a great player. I think people and teams that he was past misunderstand him and didn't give him the opportunity to be who he is.
These weren't isolated moments. They formed part of a much broader pattern. The players who had actually shared the court with Westbrook consistently came to his defense, countering the harsh media narratives that followed him for years. Austin Reeves, Bradley Beal, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray all had, at different times, praised Westbrook's leadership, toughness, and unmatched work ethic. These were qualities that didn't show up in box scores, but defined what made him invaluable inside a locker room. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. Those who knew Westbrook personally, who'd seen how he practiced, competed, and motivated others, spoke almost universally in his favor. Meanwhile, critics on the outside fixated on his shooting percentages, turnovers, and supposed inability to adapt. That raised the real question: who do you trust more? The players who fought beside him every night, or analysts and fans watching from a distance? The reality was shocking. The passionate defenses from Westbrook's peers only amplified the absurdity of his situation. Picture this. It's September 30th, 2025. NBA training camps are in full swing. Media days are done, rosters finalized, the season countdown underway. And yet, one glaring absence dominates the headlines. A 9-time All-Star, a former MVP, and the all-time leader in triple-doubles with over 200 to his name, remains unsigned. At 36 years old, Russell Westbrook stands in uncharted territory. For the first time in his illustrious 17-year career, he's watching a new NBA season begin without a team to represent. This wasn't the ending anyone predicted. Just months earlier, Westbrook had completed what many dubbed his redemption run with the Denver Nuggets, coming off the bench for the first time in years, averaging 13.3 points, 6.1 assists for 0.9 rebounds, and 1.4 steals per game across 75 appearances. He shot a solid 44.9% from the field, and even improved his three-point percentage to 32.3%. He fit seamlessly alongside Nikola Jokic, brought energy and leadership to bench, and helped the Nuggets reach the Western Conference semifinals. His resurgence was so notable that he finished 7th in Sixth Man of the Year voting, a stunning turnaround for someone critics had labeled washed just a season before. But then came June 29th, 2025, the day Westbrook made a decision that would define his offseason. He declined his $3.4 million player option with Denver, betting on himself to earn a bigger role and a better contract elsewhere. At the time, the move seemed logical. Time seemed like a no-brainer. He had just proven he could still deliver at a high level. Teams were expected to line up for his experience, leadership, and relentless motor. Surely, the phone would ring. Offers would roll in. Right? Wrong. As summer gave way to fall, as free agency windows opened and closed, and as training camps kicked off, that phone stayed silent. The market for Russell Westbrook had gone cold. Eerily, inexplicably cold. One of basketball's most electrifying players now found himself in limbo, a situation that felt surreal not just to fans, but to the entire basketball world. But this story isn't just about one man's career. It's about Russell Westbrook, the cultural icon, the trendsetter, the player who redefined what a point guard could be, the man who averaged a triple-double not once, not twice, but for multiple seasons, shattering Oscar Robertson's long-standing record and carving his name into the fabric of NBA history. The same player who stayed loyal to Oklahoma City after Kevin Durant left, dragging a rebuilding team to the playoffs through sheer willpower. A future Hall of Famer, a member of the NBA's 75th anniversary team, a man who's given nearly 2 decades of his life to this sport. And yet, here we are, Media Day, September 29, 2025. For the first time in his entire career, Westbrook wasn't there. While his peers smiled for cameras, fielded questions about championship hopes, and posed proudly in their new uniforms, Westbrook was nowhere to be seen. The absence hit like a gut punch, a glaring reminder of how quickly the game moves on. Social media erupted. Fans were in disbelief. Russell Westbrook is really teamless. It's Media Day. This is unreal, bruh. One fan wrote, perfectly summarizing collective shock. Another posted, I'd be very shocked if Russ doesn't play. If he doesn't, man, that's tough. The sadness is palpable even through the screen. A third pleaded, Can someone take him? Please. But perhaps the most haunting comment came from someone who simply wrote, "Damn, it didn't dawn on me. Free agents don't have media day. Probably feels crazy for Russ." That one line hit at the emotional core of the story. The loneliness, the alienation, the gut-wrenching feeling of watching your profession continue without you. For Westbrook, it wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about identity, pride, and legacy. The question echoing across sports talk shows and social media threads was painfully simple. How did we get here? How did a player of Westbrook's caliber, with his accolades, his resume, his still-proven ability to produce, end up in this position? The answer, as analysts began to unpack, was complex. It wasn't just about Westbrook himself. It was about the evolving nature of the NBA, how teams value veterans, how the game prioritizes analytics, and how the collective bargaining agreement has shifted the economics of roster construction. At 36 years old, soon to be 37 in November, Westbrook represents a dying archetype. The high-usage, ball-dominant point guard, the engine who thrives in transition and attacks the rim with fury. But in today's NBA, where efficiency, spacing, and three-point shooting reign supreme, that style has become something of a relic. And yet, even as the league moves on, one question still lingers in the air.
Johnson said this on a recent interview with Shannon Sharp of FS1. Magic said, "You got to own your stuff. You can't keep blaming the media and the fans." I don't think it's in him. I don't think it's within Russell Westbrook's personality. Is that what made him a Hall of Fame level player is now a hindrance. Is that he is so singular-minded that, and his belief in himself is so strong, he can't acknowledge weakness.
Has the game evolved beyond Russell Westbrook, or has it simply forgotten how much it once needed him? Still is, yet it doesn't align neatly with the modern NBA blueprint. His career 30.5% three-point shooting percentage raises red flags for teams now obsessed with floor spacing. His trademark ball-dominant style, once his greatest weapon, clashes with the share-the-well philosophy that defines most of today's championship contenders. But the problem runs deeper than just playing style. The NBA's evolving financial landscape, particularly under the new collective bargaining agreement with its first and second apron restrictions, has made front offices extremely cautious. Teams are hesitant to sign aging veterans, even decorated ones, unless the cost-to-value ratio is perfect. Westbrook reportedly sought between $5 to $7 million annually, a modest figure for a player's resume, but still above the veteran's minimum of roughly $3.3 million. Teams, however, balked. They saw the age, the injury history, including the hand surgery he underwent in May 2025, the slight decline in explosiveness, and decided the potential risk outweighed the reward. The message in the market was clear. Even if brutal, Westbrook's perceived value had plummeted. According to league sources, several teams expressed preliminary interest, but none followed through with a formal offer. The Sacramento Kings appeared to be the strongest suitor, yet even that opportunity grew complicated as the franchise scrambled to free roster space by moving Malik Monk or Devin Carter. What made the situation sting even more was context. This wasn't a washed-up player clinging to the past. This wasn't someone who'd fallen off so hard that being unsigned made sense. Quite the opposite. Westbrook had just completed one of his most efficient and self-aware seasons in years. He proved he could accept a smaller role, integrate seamlessly into a system, and contribute to winning basketball. The Denver Nuggets flourished with him on the court. His chemistry with Nikola Jokic became one of the league's most uplifting storylines, a story of humility, reinvention, and persistence. Yet somehow, the same criticisms that had trailed Westbrook for years refused to die. Interview 1616, 1636. So why didn't Denver just bring him back? Why weren't other contenders jumping at the chance to sign him, even at the veteran's minimum? The answer exposes some uncomfortable truths about the modern NBA, how quickly the league moves on from its icons, how coldly franchises calculate cost versus contribution, and how little room there is for sentimentality in today's front offices. This wasn't just about fit or salary cap mechanics. It symbolized a broader shift in how teams value players, not for what they've done, but for what their analytics suggest they might do next. And Russell Westbrook, despite the loyalty of his peers and the respect he'd earned over 17 grueling seasons, found himself on the wrong side of that evolution. The disconnect between how his teammates viewed him as a leader, a grinder, and an inspiration, and how executives calculated his worth had never been wider. His competitive fire, relentless drive, and unbreakable spirit, once the hallmarks of his greatness, no longer aligned with what NBA front offices valued most. That disconnect left one of the game's fiercest competitors watching from the sidelines as a new season loomed closer. The hard truth and the question of what's next were unavoidable. For all the passionate defenses from his peers, the reality remained. Russell Westbrook was still unsigned. And with each passing day, the chances of him starting the 2025-26 season on an NBA roster grew slimmer. The question evolved from will Russ find a team to a more troubling why can't Russ find a team? And the answers, while uncomfortable, exposed the harsh realities of the modern NBA. The first and most obvious truth: athletic decline. At 36 years old, Westbrook simply isn't the same force who won MVP in 2017. The explosiveness that once allowed him to slice through defenses like a knife has dulled. The lightning-fast first step that made him nearly unguardable in transition has slowed. These aren't criticisms. They're biological facts, reminders that time eventually catches everyone, no matter how superhuman they once seemed. Adding to the concern, Westbrook underwent hand surgery in May 2025 to repair ligament tears and fractures, which further raised doubts about his durability. His playing time had already dipped sharply, from 34.3 minutes per game with the Clippers to 27.9 with Denver, and then plummeting to just 18.2 minutes per game during the Western Conference semifinals. The shooting remained another sticking point. Westbrook's career 30.5% three-point percentage still lags behind the league average of 36 to 37%, a worrying figure in an era where spacing and perimeter efficiency drive offensive success. Even though he improved to 32.3% from three in Denver, his best mark since his MVP campaign, executives remain unconvinced that the improvement was sustainable or that it outweighed concerns about his overall efficiency. Turnovers also haunted the conversation. Westbrook averaged 3.2 turnovers per game last season, with a career average of 3.9, numbers that made teams wary of losing possessions in high-leverage moments. But perhaps the most damaging issue wasn't statistical. It was perception. Around the league, there's a growing belief that Westbrook's style of play, while thrilling, doesn't translate to winning basketball in today's system-driven, pace-and-space era. It's a cruel irony given that he had just helped Denver win a championship. But the narrative persists. The concern isn't whether Westbrook can still contribute. His numbers prove that he can, but how he contributes. In the eyes of front offices, the way he plays simply doesn't fit how modern teams construct their rotations. It was Colin Cowherd who captured the situation bluntly during a broadcast interview, providing the wider context behind the transformation of how the league now views players like Westbrook. Interview 1938, 2007. Teams want ball movement, not ball dominance. They want players who can thrive off the ball, who can space the floor, who can make quick reads and keep the offense flowing, Colin Cowherd explained. Westbrook, for all his gifts, has built his identity around controlling the ball, creating for himself and others through sheer force of will and athleticism. That worked beautifully when he was younger and more explosive, but at 36, with less burst, it becomes a problem. As one anonymous scout bluntly put it, he isn't a natural role player. The salary expectations only complicated things further. Westbrook was reportedly asking for $5 to $7 million annually, well above the veteran's minimum of around $3.3 million for a player who would turn 37 during the season. One with known limitations and expected to accept a bench role, many front offices viewed that as unrealistic. The math didn't add up. Why spend mid-tier money on a veteran when younger players with greater upside were available for the minimum? Or why not use that same cap space to retain promising homegrown talent? The new collective bargaining agreement and its apron restrictions made matters even worse. Teams operating above the first apron of $178.1 million face heavy limitations on roster moves, including restrictions on signing free agents. The Houston Rockets, for example, found themselves about $1.25 million over that threshold, effectively preventing them from signing Westbrook, despite needing point guard depth after Fred VanVleet's season-ending ACL tear. The Sacramento Kings, the franchise most frequently linked to Westbrook, faced similar struggles. They simply couldn't clear a roster spot without moving Malik Monk or Devin Carter. Trades that never materialized. Then came the elephant in the room, the uncomfortable truth about Westbrook's recent team history. 3 consecutive franchises, the Lakers, Clippers, and Nuggets, all opted not to bring him back. And that pattern sent a loud message to the rest of the league. The Denver decision was particularly revealing because Westbrook had actually thrived there. If a team where he fit well, produced consistently, and earned the locker room's respect still didn't re-sign him, not even at the minimum, what did that imply about his market value? Meanwhile, old narratives began to resurface. Reports of locker room tension, though disputed by teammates like Michael Porter Jr., cast fresh shadows. One anonymous Nuggets player allegedly called Westbrook so immature, and there were claims of a confrontation with assistant coach David Adelman during the playoffs. Although these rumors were swiftly denied by those who knew him best, they fueled the perception that Westbrook remained a difficult presence, a label that has haunted him for years. As September bled into October, the grim reality became harder to deny. Russell Westbrook might actually begin the 2025-26 season without a team. Multiple league sources confirmed they wouldn't be surprised if he entered the season and signed, a stunning fall for one of basketball's most dynamic players. The comparisons to Carmelo Anthony's 2022 situation were impossible to ignore. Like Carmelo, Westbrook seemed to be facing an industry-wide reluctance to embrace aging stars, even those who had proven they could still contribute. So, what's next for Russell Westbrook? Realistically, his options are narrowing. The Sacramento Kings remain his best bet if they can clear roster space. A reunion with DeMar DeRozan, backing up Dennis Schroeder, and providing bench energy and veteran leadership could be a fitting new chapter. It's a role that might finally allow both sides, team and legend, to win. But as of October 1st, 2025, that deal still hadn't materialized, and with every passing day, the chances grew slimmer. Other rumored destinations, the Golden State Warriors, who could use a second-unit spark, the Miami Heat, in search of veteran leadership, and the Detroit Pistons, hoping to add experience to a young roster, all remained speculative. Each team had its own financial constraints, roster limits, and internal priorities that ultimately didn't align with Westbrook's asking price. The idea of playing overseas has been floated, with EuroLeague teams potentially offering significant money. But for a player who spent his entire career in the NBA, who has become a cultural icon in American basketball, who has built an entire brand around being one of the league's most recognizable stars, that path likely represents a last resort, not a dream opportunity. Retirement is another possibility, though Westbrook's relentless work ethic suggests he's nowhere near ready to walk away. His training continues at full throttle, workouts on his yacht, daily conditioning sessions, maintaining elite-level shape, all signs of a man who still believes he has something left to give, a man unwilling to accept that his story might already be written. Even in past interviews, Westbrook has often reflected on his broader mindset and life beyond the game. Interview 2400 Hours 12, 2400 Hours 32. He once said, "I've always made sure I had options, that basketball wasn't the only thing defining who I am." That mindset of keeping perspective, of maintaining purpose beyond the hardwood, may serve him now more than ever. Still, the waiting game drags on. Training camps have opened without him. Media days have passed without his presence. The regular season looms just weeks away. And with each sunrise, the window narrows further. Teams have already set their rotations, built chemistry, and begun preparing for the long grind ahead. Bringing in a player of Westbrook's magnitude midstream isn't easy. Not financially, not tactically, not emotionally. His continued free agent status forces uncomfortable questions upon the league, about loyalty, about how quickly the NBA discards its legends, and about what kinds of contributions are valued in today's data-driven era. It's a brutal reminder that professional sports, for all their passion and storytelling, operate on a cold and unforgiving logic, one with little room for sentiment, legacy, or nostalgia. As October unfolds and tip-off approaches, Russell Westbrook's future remains shrouded in uncertainty. Whether he finds a landing spot with Sacramento, accepts a training camp invite, considers overseas basketball, or ultimately decides to walk away on his own terms, only time will tell. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to check out the suggested videos by clicking the cards on your screen.